with Job and his friends. And again, we've gone over the backstory of what's happening in behind the scenes and where he was, and not going back over the arguments that were made. His statement, then you had Eliphaz with his argument, again, more theological, and this is my reading of it, my gleaning of it, my grid work of it. And you can see where there is words to back that up. And he gets very flowery about, well, this is what life is like when you're following God. And, again, it's this very black and white thing that God cannot do evil. And we even see that this kind of Eliphaz kind of thought and theology is in Christianity. That, we have this come to Jesus, make your life better thing that's going on right now, which is really kind of reprehensible. That we're not coming to him for who he is, we're coming to him for what we can get out of it. Now, I know that there's a lot of good things that he has. I give you life and life abundantly and eternal life and all of this. But along the way, he might be fulfilling the will of God in ways that maybe the church doesn't want or we don't specifically want. And, except the consequences of sin, and I'm talking about behavioral sin, not just sin, between God. If you're going to sin and, after the cross, there will be cause and effects. There always is. But here we have God moving, and we say, well, I want his will, but would you want his will if you knew his will was what Job was going through? And I was thinking in my mind also, perspective. The idea that, this much time is my life, 100 years, and if you think of a line going here and a line under it and a line under it, representing eternity in each one of those, like a graph, this is not much time considering how much lines you have. I mean, if this is 100 years, this is 1,000, here's 2,000, 3,000, you get the idea, and all the space in this room can represent eternity. And what happens in here, especially in the middle where I am, we make that the biggest deal, and it's perspective. But again, the idea that he is God and everybody belongs to him. He wants to do good for people, but here he is because of things behind the scene are going on. And Job has a very good grasp of the fact that there is no iniquity in me. I am a man of integrity. I'm righteous before God. And so God is moving in my life because God can move in people's life. We belong to him. Even scriptures, all souls belong to me, the soul of the Father, the soul of the Son. Many people become afraid of God because they're afraid if I give my life to God, he will do a Job thing. It's not like, well, you can't do it unless I give you control. And he's like, no, I could, but I'm not. That's the idea of elections. We get lost in, well, God is. He's the puppet master. Well, no, he could, but maybe he's not. But in some instance, maybe he is. It's up to the individual to go to God and see. Job tends to, in his arguments, go back to his own relationship to God, not some litmus test, some checklist of what is and is not. What have I done or not done? He knew because of his own conscientious lifestyle of, again, doing burnt offerings for different things because of God. So we see Eliphaz is very theological, and then Job comes back in 6, talks about his grief and talks about how God is treating him, that this is real world to him. It's not something. He even goes, who are you? I didn't call you to be here. Why are you here in my face? You don't even have to be here, he does in 6. And he gets very pointed in 7 about it. There are times appointed to man. You're not putting that into account also. And my days are moving swifter than a weaver's, and they are spent without hope. God can the God of the universe put a righteous man in a hopeless state? And of course, he can. And that's what scares these guys. Because they're in theology, I am bulletproof because of what I am. And this whole bulletproofness, this whole, I was thinking today how we have this, I want to share the love of God with others. The love of God is just a warm glass of milk that you have. It's the conduit is to give the others so they can worship. God's love is not for us to give to others. God's love is for us to go and get love and to love him. The idea that man can love him, not that man is loved by him, is actually the stronger conduit. God will love us and will never stop loving us, but will we now have the responsibility and the privilege to love him? That's the different thing, that we have this love for him, not just his love for us and others. It's like a stream. We see him as a stream that comes down to give to others instead of a stream that we reach up to. The privilege to love God. We act like that's not anything. Or everybody says, I love God, but I do what I want. Well, no, you don't love God. Let me get back into the story here. He talks about living a life without hope here. He talks about, I love what he says in 19. How long will you not depart from me, nor leave me alone till I swallow down the spittle? If I have sinned, what does it have to do with you? Why are you in my grill? If you're right, why are you even here? So he makes that point. Bildad steps in, and like I said, Bildad's argument is, how long will you speak these things, and how long shall the words of the mouth be like a strong wind? I mean, he's not even giving the guy any credit. It's just like a strong wind. You're not saying anything. Will God pervert judgment, and doth the Almighty pervert judgment? Like I said earlier, he's saying that you're already in jail. You're guilty because you're in jail. His logic is, well, obviously, if this is happening to you, you're guilty. If the children have sinned against him, and to have him cast them away for their transgressions, if thou wilt seek God unto betimes, and make thy supplications to the Almighty, if thou were pure and upright, surely now he would have awakened for thee, and make the habitation of thy righteous prosperous. Very wordy, but it's actually very beautiful the way he's saying this, is that if you'd gone to God beforehand, this wouldn't have happened. God's beating you down because you didn't go to him aforetime. That's not how sin works. There will be a time for judgment for sin, but right now, sometimes God will allow us to see the cause and effect of our sin, not the direct spiritual consequence. That's the wrath, So we see him where he has this, where he's making this kind of backwards argument that you're in jail, therefore you must be guilty. If you'd have gone to God at aforetime, I like how he works that. If thou wouldest seek after God betimes, and make thy supplications to the Almighty, if thou wert pure and upright, surely now he would awaken for thee, and make thy habitation of thy righteous prosperous. Though thy beginnings were small, yet the latter end shall be great and increase. Again, he kind of leans also into Eliphaz's argument. That's why I said that he's kind of a lawyer, kind of a scribe. You got the theologian and the scribe here. So the idea that this guy also sees it from other points of view. But we are all but yesterday, and know nothing, because our days on the earth are a shadow. Shall not they teach thee, and tell thee, and utter words out of their heart? So the idea is he's relying on the teachings of yesterday. He says, and inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare yourself to the search of their fathers. We're going to go back to theology, guys. These guys were smarter than us. They know what's going on. So we're going to rely on theologians. We're going to rely on the law. We're going to rely on the perspectives of the past, our traditions, to guide us. In some instances that might work, but only if those traditions and those guideposts were true. So again, it's cyclic logic to say the fathers got it right, so we're going to go with the fathers. Well, why did the fathers get it right? Because they said they got it right. Well, okay, how do we prove the fathers got it right? Well, I want to leapfrog before the fathers and see what the source material is. That's what this whole grid work thing is, to leapfrog past any of our fathers and say, what does the Bible really say? Not what does this person say or that person say. So here's Bildad. He's kind of making that argument. But we are of yesterday and know nothing. We're not smart. We don't know anything. These guys were smart. I mean, how many times we have seminaries will lean on dead men's from the 14th or 15th century, and they're so smart, or the 18th century, they're so smart, and we just Xerox their ideas. We don't confront the ideas to see if they're true or not. And, there's so many authors that are making money, not because of the content is true, but because the content is accepted to be true. So he makes that argument, and he goes and talks about this. I wrote down traditions. He talks about, so are the paths of all those that forget God, and the hypocrites' hope shall perish, whose hope shall be cut off, and whose trust shall be a spider's web. He shall lean upon his house, but it shall not stand. He shall not hold fast, but it shall not endure. He is green before the sun, and his branch reaches forth in his garden. His roots are wrapped around the heap, and seeth the places of stones. The idea is that these people, it says that you're supposed to follow the teachings of the traditions. Can the rush grow up without the mire? Can the flag grow without water? The idea that where you are, if you're in jail, we can tell, just like you can tell this grew, there has to be water here, and this grew, there has to be mire here. That's something you can't see under the soil, but because that plant lives there, then that says that mire is there. Because you have a certain plant living here, that says there's water there. If you were trying to find water, you would find a certain plant and dig down and find the water source for the plant. What he's saying, if I'm seeing you in jail, if I'm seeing these things happening to you, well, duh, then we know that there's water there, and that's a subjective argument. That's the argument of this book, the whole idea of why are bad things happening to good people. And you can see his argument he's making. And so are the paths of those that forget God. That's a slam. You've forgotten God. Look, just like these plants show mire and water, your life is showing that you've forgotten God and you're a hypocrite. And that your hope is cut off. Your house will be taken down. It won't stand. You're like something that's green in the sun, but the roots wrap around the heap and they're only stones. There's no life to you. You look like you're green. You look like you're flourishing, but deep down you're a root that has rocks all around it. And we know that's not good for a plant to grow if there are rocks around it. It can't grow its roots around because of the rocks. His roots are wrapped around. If you destroy him from his place, then it will deny him, saying, I have never seen it. So if you get pulled out of your place, the ground will go, you were never here. I mean, his old argument here. Again, behold, God will not cast away the perfect man, neither will he help the evildoers. You just called him a hypocrite. You called him an evildoer. I mean, he's sitting there scraping these things, and instead of you trying to comfort, you're saying, well, you're an evildoer. I mean, we see this, and sometimes we Baptists are told that this is how we treat the world, that we're always judging the world. You're a sinner, you're a this, you're a that. I can tell your lifestyle by what you are. And we need to really watch that. We come across as Bildad. We come across as Eliphaz. Oh, happy, happy. Come to Jesus. Happy, happy, joy. Your life won't be rough. Really? Oh, well, I can tell what's going on in your life. I'm a fruit inspector. I'm a root inspector based on the fruit of your life. Well, that has some merit because even Job begins the next chapter. I know there is so of a truth, but how can a man be just before God? He doesn't go against his argument, even though he doesn't accept it. He turns around and continues it by saying, okay, if you're right, how can a man be just before God? Okay, now you've made this statement. How can you be just before God? And that's what 9 is about. If ye contend with him, he cannot answer him 1 in 1,000. He is wise in heart and mighty and in strength, who hath hardened himself against him and hath prospered. So the idea here is for like the atheistic Gnostics that hardens himself. I want to live a certain way. Who can force God to speak? That's the question. Even if you're just, how do you force God to speak? If God didn't want to speak and you thought you were just, still, what are your options? He's even taking Bildad and moving forward to say, well, what are your options then? How do you force God to speak? He removes mountains and they are not, who overturns them in his anger. He shakes the earth out of its place. He talks about him setting up Arcturus and Orion and the Pleiades in his chambers. He does great things. He says he can even move around me. Who am I to say, what are you doing? Who am I to say to God as he moves around me in these wonderful things to grab him by the shirt or kind of get his attention and say, who is he to even recognize me in all of this? So, okay, even if you were right, even if you're right about the sin, how does a just man get God's attention? And Job's going into that. For lo, he goes by me, and I see him not. Behold, he taketh away. Who can hinder him? If God will not withdraw his anger, the proud helpers do stoop under him. How much less am I to answer him and choose out my words to reason with him? Even though I were righteous, he would not answer. And if I would make supplication to my judge, and if I had called and he had answered me, would I not believe that he had hearkened to my voice? The idea is, for he breaketh me with the tempest and magnifies my wounds without cause. He's already saying this. This is the reason this is happening. It's because it's without a cause. There's no reason for this to happen. This is the problem with your argument. And again, that's basically been the argument of the book of Job. That's without a cause. There's one thing I said to him: He destroys the perfect and the wicked. That's the statement that scared them. He will destroy the perfect and the wicked. Oh no, no, I'm safe. I'm safe. Well, you're safe from his wrath, but you're not safe from what goes on in this world. And so we kind of, as Christians, have a hard time. There's many places in the Bible that are rough on our thinking, that are rough on our theologies, that goes against our accepted grain. And that's this part of Job and other parts where he's defending God without bringing us into the positive light. Well, it's impossible for God, because of Jesus or for God of whatever, to do anything to me unprotected. You're not protected. You're protected from the wrath of God alone. That's the only thing we're protected of, and that's good. But this wasn't the wrath of God. And now we start thinking thoughts that are, well, it can't be the will of God. The will of God is for me to always go up in better and new life and more abundantly. I mean, again, like I was saying, about the span of life. We get lost in this little bitty thing saying this is the end of the game. We still got life going on, the eternal life. So we need to stop being so myopic about, I'm viewing God here a certain way, and He needs to fit in my little box about what's going on. You know what? I might not find what's going on until I get over here. So we're playing a longer game than you and I are actually thinking about. So he talks about that here. He destroys the perfect and the wicked. If the scourge slay suddenly, he will laugh at the trial of the innocent. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked. He covers the faces of the judges, therefore, where and who is he? He talks about, now my days are swifter than a post. They pass away as swift ships. If I say I will forget my complaint, I'll leave off my heaviness and comfort myself, but I know that will not hold me innocent. The idea is that God is holding me innocent, but you're not. You're not holding me innocent here. You're the ones that are holding me guilty. God's not holding me guilty. You are the ones who are coming at me. I could comfort myself in knowing that, well, this is what God's life right now. This is what God has going on, even though it really hurts and it sucks real bad. It's God's will. But you guys are the ones coming on. You're filled with iniquity. You're unjust. If I be wicked, then why then labor I in vain? If I wash myself with snow, water, and make my hands never so clean, yet thou wilt plunge me in the ditch and make my clothes abhorrent to me. He is not a man as I am, that I should answer him, and he should come together in judgment. Neither is there any daysman between us. A daysman is an interceder, an advocate. There's nobody between us for me to go, hey, can you go talk to God in my way? So he does say this, though, even though I was clean. He's not a man like me. I can't make him come and you will give me your attention. That's what he's saying here. There's no way to get the attention of God, even if you guys were right. Neither is there a daysman. Let him take his rod away from me, and let not his fear terrify me. Then would I speak and not fear him, but it is not so with me. So if he took this away, then I wouldn't fear him, and I could approach him. But he has this going on, so I know that there's enmity between us for a reason I don't know, so okay. That's the way it is for now. And they have a hard time with these thoughts. Even we in the 21st century have a hard time with those thoughts. My soul is weary of life, and I will leave my complaint upon myself. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. I will say unto God, do not condemn me. Show me, therefore, thou contendest with me. Is it good unto thee that thou shouldest oppress, that thou shouldest despise the work of your hands, and shine upon the counsel of the wicked? So the idea that is it good for you? Is this how you want it? Is this good for you, that you're oppressing me, but your light is shining on the wicked? See what he's doing here, this juxtaposition. We think that if we're good, his light will shine upon me, and his oppression will be upon the wicked. He's using that an opposite argument there. So he again talks about, say, hast thou eyes of flesh? Do you see as a man see? Are your days as a man's days? Are they years as a man's days? That thou inquirest after mine iniquity and search after my sin? Once again, when I talked about the perspective, that we see this, he's looking at the whole lines, the whole gamut. And so we get lost in this little bitty point. And he said, and again, now he's making this point, and I'm just kind of reiterating his point. Remember, I beseech thee that thou hast made me as clay and will bring me back to dust again. Thou hast not poured me out as milk, thou hast not poured me out as milk, or curdled me as cheese. Thou hast clothed me with skin and flesh and bloom, and fenced me with bones and sinews. Thou hast granted me my life in favor, and these things that thou hast hid in thine heart, I know that this is with thee. I know all this stuff about you. I know that you put me together. I know that you built me this certain way. And if this is the way you want it to be, and again, he's making the same cyclic argument again. But thou huntest me as a fierce lion, and again thou showest thyself marvelous before me. Thou renewest thy witness against me, and increasest thy indignation upon me. Changes and war are against me. Wherefore hast thou brought me forth out of my mother's womb? Again, the idea of all this stuff and this calamity and this war that you have going on with me, it seems. Not it seems, it is. Why would we, that's his only question is, why would I bring forth into life just to be an object of war, of this war with you, to be taken away and be in this fight and this struggle? And he's asking some serious questions, but he's not condemning God for what God's doing. This is the point we're making. He's not condemning God for what he's doing. He's just asking God, what are you doing? That's a totally different spin on the ball. A lot of people will condemn God for what he's doing. This is what the other men were doing. They were trying to save themselves. And by condemning God, well, God would never do this and God would never do that. If he did, I'd condemn him. Who are you to condemn God? That's what he's doing here. He's just trying to say, I'm not condemning you for what you're doing. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. Are not my days few? Cease then, and let me alone, that I may take comfort a little. Before I go hence, I will not return into the land of darkness and the shadow of death. So the idea of, you guys leave me alone. Just leave me alone. If this is the way it's going to be and I'm going into the shadow of death, that's the way it's going to be. So he takes the argument of Bildad, and instead of fighting against it, he takes it to a conclusion that backs his point. And that's great argumentative structure. Think about that. Then instead of you fighting the argument, you go, okay, if you're right, what about this and this and this? And then they can't say anything. Oh, yeah, how can a man get God's attention? How can you go, excuse me, you have to talk to me? And he goes, no, I don't. That's where we get this whole love of God. I'm always on his side, and he loves me, and he's pining after me. Yeah. That's not me making some frat boy buddy or some 15-year-old girl who's pining after you. Oh, give me your attention. He doesn't have to notice us. He doesn't obligate it to us because we exist. So anyway, that's kind of the argument here. I'm going to stop because we go into Zophar talks tomorrow, and then here's Job talking again. So, and then we have Eliphaz coming back. But look at the argumentative structure and notice how instead of pushing against it, he takes it on into a more clear and understandable conclusion. So what are you going to say? You can't force God to talk to you. That's always been the thing. We're not so depraved we can't come to God, but we are depraved and God doesn't have to come to us. We always think God has to come to us, that we're the object. He doesn't have to. And that should be scary, that he didn't have to be God with us. We think he did. It's almost a form of self-worship, but no, he didn't. There's some good truths here that we're going to see, and we're going to see these argumentative back and forths. I'm really enjoying this. Thank you.